Bye. My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our DUK Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of DUK Dogs. I'm your host, Josh Miller. And before we get rolling here on today's episode, I want to make sure we spend the time to thank our sponsors because the show cannot happen without their support. So thank you to DUK, the presenting sponsor of the show. DUK Premium Performance Sport 3020 is the blend of food that I feed my personal dogs and the food that I feed the dogs in the kennel. So go check them out. It's a high-quality premium food. I have nothing but great things to say and some great experiences to share. www.uknuba.com. Also, thank you to Lucky Duck. Lucky Duck is your 5-star crash test-rated kennel, both in the intermediate and the large size, so that no matter how big or small your four-legged hunting partner is, you can be sure that they're traveling in the safest way possible. Also, as we head into late season, make sure you check out the kennel cover to make sure that they stay nice and warm. www.luckyduck.com. Thank you to Sitka Gear. Sitka Gear is your premium option for outdoor clothing, whether you're looking for a hunting system or if you're looking for everyday wear. Sitka Gear is your go-to place to be sure that you're comfortable, you can stay in the field longer, and if you're, in my case, you can wear less clothes and be warmer. I used to pack on a lot of heavy clothes. I look like the Michelin Man going out, and I would still freeze, and so I'm wearing less clothes and staying warmer. www.sitkagear.com. Also, thank you to Gun Dog Supply. Gun Dog Supply is your one-stop shop for all of your hunting and training needs as it pertains to your four-legged hunting partner. Great people, great customer service, great selection, and is dedicated to us, the outdoor hunting dog owner. So www.gundogsupply.com. Also, thank you to Kent Cartridge. I literally just loaded up the truck with some cases of Kent Bismuth is my go-to. I love that shell, and it has honestly been a pretty major impact for my hunting season. I see less crippled birds. I see much harder hitting. Love that. Go check them out. Kent Cartridge, specifically that Kent Bismuth. Last but not least, thank you to Retriever Roadmap. Retriever Roadmap is your online option for your training guidance to train your own dog at home. It doesn't matter if you're looking for obedience, if you're looking for guidance for picking out a puppy, if you're looking for how to finish your dog to make them the dog of your dreams, go check out www.retrieverroadmap.com. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us. I know we had I think maybe like a week or so off on this as I traveled. And we're going to kind of start this off with, so let me kind of preview the episode here. So first off, thank you to Whitney, my beautiful, gorgeous wife, for joining us here today. And she's been upland hunting while I've been running around waterfowl and archery hunting. Well, I guess you've been archery hunting quite a bit too. But I wanted to, this is kind of a fun episode for me, because I've been wanting to do this episode for quite a while, and I don't know why, but it just kind of feels right now. And so this is probably going to be a little longer episode, I would guess, but I'm going to really dig into an idea that I think will be impactful for a lot of people, but this has been kind of percolating up in between my ears for some time, so I'm going to kind of go over that. But first, we're going to start this off with a couple hunting stories, because I want to catch up with Whitney on how her season is going. I have a pretty cool archery story for any of you that are big game hunters out there, or maybe just like hunting stories in general. I have something that was kind of crazy that happened to me in Missouri. And then I want to get into kind of the meat and potatoes of what this episode is going to be like. So before we get going with Whitney, make sure if there's anyone that has been looking at Retriever Roadmap that is kind of tinkered with it, kind of keeping your eye on it, I would keep your eye on Black Friday. I'm just saying, you may find something there that would be very appealing, for you to get into that program. So that's my tease for you guys. Keep your eye open on Black Friday. So
that would also be a great gift to give someone for Christmas.
It would be. And we actually have a something that we're going to be doing with Delta in December around that too. So really trying to give back conservationally in a number of ways. And since it's not official or out there yet, I can't talk too much about it. But a lot of cool stuff coming on. And then next year, we've already started talking about different events that we're putting on for members, different areas in the country. Some really neat stuff coming on. So so keep your eye out. But so hunting. So first off, Whitney.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
Oh my gosh. This has probably been the most I've been hunting in maybe since we had Ava 3 years ago. I've been able to go to North Dakota duck hunting with you. And then, also went to Kansas dove hunting. Then I've just been archery hunting around here and pheasant hunting around here. And it has been literally so much fun. I feel like I'm getting back to my roots, back to kind of like what I really, really love doing. Obviously hunting.
Well, yeah, because you kind of went through that necessity, I should say, mom phase.
Yeah, because we had Ava in March.
3.5 years ago.
3.5 years ago. Yeah. And then,
so this time 4 years ago, you were very pregnant, but you were still climbing up and down trees, archery hunting. I vividly remember that.
Totally. We had 4 horses at the time, and I would still load hay bales in the back of the truck. Okay. And then we had her in March. Okay. So then I kind of took on, now I'm a new mom. How do I juggle life? Focused on Ava that hunting season. Then the next hunting season, was I pregnant with Colt or did I have Colt? I can't remember, but I mean, we had 2 kids and then it was crazy. So hunting took the back seat. I just took on the mom role, but now I'm finally at that point where I feel like we have a really good system down, especially when you're home and you can watch the kids and we have our families around that cannot watch the kids. And now we can kind of get back to my roots and doing what I love to do, hunting.
For those of you that don't know, Whitney is essentially a certified badass in how she specifically archery hunts. I mean, before having Ava, I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say that you hunted 4 or 5 days a week.
Yeah, I was always in the tree.
Always. And paid off. Like, I think it was just, a year or 2 before you had Ava. You killed that, I think it went like 162 or something like that on our property. I mean, great deer. It's fun to see you getting back to that. And you'll rewind a long time ago, feels like forever ago, when we started dating. I was working in an archery shop, which led you to get your first bow, which led you to fall in love with shooting, which led you to fall in love with archery hunting. And so it's just kind of neat that really is a very foundational thing of our relationship, of our past, of our growth, and fun that we can now apply that on our own property.
Yeah.
So let's talk with the dog side of things. Let's talk upland hunting, because I know you've been upland hunting a fair amount, and just kind of walk me through what that season has been like.
Yeah, it's been really fun. We didn't get out right away just because it was still so warm here, and I refused to hunt the dogs and risk them overheating. But we have some snow on the ground. We have great cover, and it's been like literally the best conditions you could possibly ask for pheasant hunting. Like 30 degrees, light snow, incredible cover, and getting bracken out in the field has been so much fun. Just a couple days ago, I was able to get out with one of our really good clients. We trained a dog for her about 10 years ago. And our relationship with them has just grown so much because we have bred 2 of their dogs. They have another one that we're going to be breeding this coming year, and just created a really incredible friendship with them. And so Wendy invited me out to go hunting on some family property, and I brought Bracken with me. She had Tessie and Emma. And Tessie, we had bred to Bud and then Bracken this last time. And so it was fun to get them back in the field together, actually, for the very first time. And then, of course, we had little Emma out there, who is from our Tessie and Bud litter. And honestly, I get so nervous sometimes when you talk about bringing multiple dogs in the field that have never hunted together before. We trained Tessie and Emma, so we knew exactly what they were capable of doing, how they hunted. And so that's why I felt so comfortable with all 3 of them in the field, because we know all 3 of their personalities and what they're like. You know that no one is going to be taking over the field. No one's going to be, out of control or anything like that. So it was really neat. And it was probably the most enjoyable pheasant hunt I have been on in a really long time.
And why is that?
Because of watching the dogs work. They were so incredibly good. So it was Wendy and I, and then Wendy had brought another friend hunting. And so 3 women. The dogs did not know Wendy's friend. Obviously, Tessie and Emma knew Wendy and I. And Bracken really never met Wendy before. And so you just have a lot of aspects in there that could maybe throw a dog off just a little bit. Not knowing who people are, not hunting together. But the dogs knew their place. They were so under control and so out there having so much fun. And when you take your dog out there and you just see how much fun they're having, under control, just doing what they love. I mean, like, as a dog owner, you could not ask for a better day.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think is really interesting is, and this is why I like talking about you doing the upland stuff so much, is, now some people are going to laugh about this, but it's the honest truth. So I, of course, waterfowl hunt a ton, travel all over to do that. And because of that, like, I just don't have time to upland hunt. Like, I do enjoy going out with you. And I just don't have a whole lot of time, to do it. And I'll give maybe a little bit. So I actually used to guide some upland hunts, some pheasant hunts in particular. We had trained dogs for an outfitter out in South Dakota. And so we'd be asked to go out and guide once in a while. And so I got shot, not joking. I watched someone else. I could watch 2 people almost kill each other. And it was not fun for me. Like, great as far as, like, my dog's got a ton of retrieves, but there's no fun about that to me at all. And that's a personal thing. And I get that some people, that's their thing and they love it and that's awesome, and all the power to you. But I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy the safety side of it. I don't enjoy when dogs are out of control, which I believe, and I actually think I'm being generous. I don't think this is an outrageous claim. I think I'm being generous when I say that the majority of upland dogs that are flushers, retrievers, are out of control 90% of the hunt. Like, I really don't think that that's an exaggeration, and I love control. I love the training. I love the work. And when we go waterfowl hunting, I can apply it, and I know what's going on. I just, sometimes when you go on an upland hunt, you don't know who you're going with. Yeah. All of a sudden, you have a dog that's 150 yards away and flushing birds and out of control, and there's whistles and yelling and screaming. That's not what you encountered on. And I would have to imagine that's what led to that being so fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so here's the deal. Like, we're 3 women in a field. Like, of course, we love to just stop and randomly talk. Like, we're out there to, it's what us women do. Like, it's a social event, honestly. But if you watched my Instagram story on it, you will totally see that we had stopped and we were talking, and the dogs literally stopped and stood by our sides. Like, that is incredible. When they've already flushed retrieve birds, they know the game, and they are still that under control, calm, collected, not whining. Like, I just stopped and I was like, this is incredible. And I remember this one time, Wendy and I were talking. She had Tessie and Emma by her. Bracken was standing by me. There was a hen that literally got up right under Wendy's foot and flew away, obviously.
Mhm.
The dogs literally stood there and watched it fly away.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely incredible. And then we're like, okay, you know, we're still talking. Like, to us, we're even oblivious to the fact that our dogs are being so under control.
Because it's an expectation.
Exactly. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And her and I have literally texted about this every single day since our hunt because we are still so blown away and proud of our dogs.
No, that's awesome. You know, I should circle back to what my original thought was when I started talking to you just a minute ago. What I thought was, what I said was funny, and was the honest truth, is that we would get a lot of people that would contact us and ask if our dogs could upland hunt,
Yeah.
which I find comical. I'm like, what do you mean, can they? You know, just because they waterfowl hunt doesn't mean that they're not capable of upland hunting. Like, again, like, I think they're showing you everything in a controlled manner, what their talents and abilities are. I get you're going to have people that they're going to say, well, how good of a nose? Okay, well, like, tell me how you rate that,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you can't. And so, yeah, so I love that you love, you know, the upland stuff. I wish I could do it more with you just because of our schedule. But the reality is that I'm gone so much. When I get back home, there's two things I want to be doing. One is archery hunting. Two is spending time with you guys and the kids.
Not in that particular order.
No, yeah, right. Yeah, it's probably the other way around. But so it doesn't offer itself for a ton of time, you know, for that, which is unfortunate. But I do really appreciate that you do take the time and you do take our dogs out and you can show that part of it.
Well, and it's one of those things. So when I have the kids by myself and you're gone, the only time I can hunt is in the middle of the day, which leaves me to pheasant hunting.
For sure.
So it works out great.
Yeah, win-win for sure. That's great. Anything else you want to put in there?
No, we're going to keep hunting and have a lot of litters. So I'll be busy while you're gone.
I'm going to kind of plug a product here. Final Rise. You got to go check out Final Rise Vest. So Final Rise is owned by a very good friend of ours, and Matt Davis. And Matt and his wife, they live out in Utah. They hand sew these vests. And I can tell you that you would be hard pressed to find a more genuine person, a more passionate person than Matt. And I promise you that those products are not only well made, but attention to detail.
Oh my gosh,
is there.
incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. So I'm 5'3", and that vest fits me phenomenal. You could find a guy who probably weighs 300 pounds. It would fit him phenomenal. Like, their sizing is incredible.
Because you can get them on the right size.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, yeah.
You can get them on the right size. Like, their sizing ranges so much, and it's so form-fitting, and they have so many different adjustments on them.
Yeah, this was not a half-baked idea that he
No.
went into making that. So so go check them out if you guys are an upland hunter. Plus, you're just going to be supporting a great person and a great family. And that's probably the biggest piece, you know, to me. Great product, no doubt.
Yeah.
But great person. So,
Final Rise.
Final Rise. Okay, so before I get into this, I want to tell you guys a little story about my archery hunt. So I was archery hunting in Missouri, and I love traveling to archery hunt. I shouldn't even say that. I've learned to love traveling to archery hunt because when we originally got our farm that we live on now, I had all these goals and ideas of, okay, I'm going to place these food plots where I currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 plots on 108 acres. Bedding areas, hinge cutting, I mean, like the whole 9 yards, did everything to set this up as a deer property. And we referenced Whitney's big deer that she killed probably 4 years ago.
Yep.
That's the only deer that we have ever gotten to a mature age on our property, period. And why that is because of the 9 days that I dread more than anything that are coming up, which is our Wisconsin rifle season, because all these deer that we watch all year, they of course don't stay on our property and they go get shot, and it's just frustrating. It's frustrating. I get, like, if you're a meat hunter, if you're like, you're not looking to, if you're not vested in the property, you're just looking to go pull the trigger and shoot something, like, I get it. Like, I'm not bashing anyone that does it, but for us, like, that's not what I enjoy. I really love mature deer. I think there's just something that trips my trigger about a mature deer, a deer that is, come of age, that shows the genetics, that shows the intelligence, that shows everything, and that chess match that it would take, especially with archery equipment, to harvest that animal. I mean, that's a big thing for me, and that's what trips my trigger. And because I've just learned that that is just not going to be a possibility, at least not very often on our own property. That's why I say I've learned to love to travel. So went down to Missouri. I love Missouri for a lot of reasons. I was actually born in Missouri, started my young life in Missouri, but I really do love Missouri. And so I'll give you the quick rundown of my hunt in Missouri. So it was, did I hunt there for 7 days? 7 days. And it was upper 70s to 80 degrees the entire trip. I mean, when you mark these on the calendar, like, hey, I'm taking this week to be in Missouri, I'm picking the rut. I'm trying to pick, first week in November, hoping it's cold. Well, it was anything but that. And so Mother Nature did not play nice with me, but was able to locate a mature deer. I'm kind of giving away the ending here, but he ended up scoring 175. He's a very big deer. And we knew he was there because my friend that we were down there hunting with, he knew of this deer, had seen this deer, had a lot of photos of this deer. And so we knew that he was on this farm. A lot of night activity, of course, because he's not moving in the daylight with it being 80 degrees. And just couldn't get on him. Like, I went in there saying it's this deer, right? That's the deer that I was going to hunt. And a lot of great deer. I had some people are going to call me crazy, but I had 160 inches, what I'm going to guess. He was literally 8 yards. I mean, I saw this deer multiple times, but he was a young deer. Like, I get that he's got a big rack, but he's a young deer. He was 3 years old. And I would love nothing more than to see that deer blow up into a 180-inch giant next year. And so that's, again, just kind of how my thought process works. So with this deer, first few days, it goes, dark to dark. And dark to dark sits for me are very difficult when I'm in a t-shirt sun tanning versus, actually feeling like I'm hunting. But on day 4, I think it was, I finally saw this deer. And we called him Droppy. Terrible name. I don't know. It was a terrible name, but he had a drop tying off of his left side. I don't know. So it was a spur of the moment name. And so anyways, I hadn't seen much anything all day. It was getting towards evening, probably an hour and a half left of daylight. And I'm in a stand that I can see a decent ways kind of across. There's like a 7-acre lake, and then kind of across that is like this little, called a fallow field. And all of a sudden I see this big deer. Right away knew it was a mature deer, but working up this tree line. And so I put the glass on him. Right away know it's him. And so I grunt. He kind of stops and looks. Grunt again. He just kind of keeps working up the tree line. So when he did that, I was like, okay, so we're getting towards dark. I'm going to pull up Onyx. I'm going to see, what does the property look like? Where do I think maybe he'd be in the morning? I know he's in this area. Where could I get in here really early? Get in my lone wolf, hang a set, try to be mobile. And I'm on my phone looking at that, and I look up, and now he's at like 150 yards, like on the hill looking. Like, he's looking for where that grunt came from. I was like, oh my gosh. So take my grunt call out again. I'm like, he's kind of like looking like now he's going to walk away. So he turns to walk away, and I grunt, and he turns, and he looks again, and I just go, rap, 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 rap. And he literally pinned his ears back and walked right at me. And when he did that, I actually like giggled to myself, and I was like, you're dead. Like, there was no doubt in my mind he's going to walk right to my tree, and this is game over. So anyways, pins his ears back, walks, literally right at me. And he had to get through this little, like, called a tree line, but it was more of a brush line. And so he gets through that. Now he's at about 80 yards, and he's, closing. And for whatever reason, now there was a doe that was in that brush line that I didn't even know was there, that she jumps up and takes off. Well, of course, being Rut, he turns, chases her. Literally screwed me. I mean, this was game over, and this doe decided to distract him. So they run off into the woods. Don't see him. Probably 15 minutes later, they come back and they're run. And all that I have to do, all this doe has to do is run by me. That's it. And this is over. Well, she doesn't do it. And so they're running. All of a sudden I hear splash. I'm like, that's kind of weird. Well, then all of a sudden I can see in the middle of this is like like I said, probably 6-7 acre lake. All of a sudden this doe is swimming away from this buck. And here's this buck swimming after her. Like, I've never in my life seen whitetails chase each other swimming. And so my first reaction was, oh my gosh, this is super cool. Immediately followed by, oh my gosh, he is super vulnerable right now, and I should probably get down and try to make a move. So I scaled down my tree faster than any time I've probably gone down a tree. Get to the bottom, take off running, and there he is, swimming after this doe, but they're kind of getting towards shore. So they get on shore, and it was really neat because I was kind of trying to make moves. Like, I had the wind perfect. Every time they were kind of distracted, I tried to bump up a little closer and a little closer. And I got to about 80 yards and got hung up because there's nothing more between me and them. So I have plenty of video on my phone, but stood there. So he bred her 3 times while all this was going on, and they were exhausted, especially after swimming around. They're exhausted, and so they, after being at that edge of the water for a while, there was a levee, kind of a built-up road on the edge of the water, and they went up and over that levee. And so that was my opportunity, and I just sprinted at that levee. And my thought process was, I'm going to come up over this levee, and they're going to be standing there at 15 yards. Well, they weren't. They're more like 50, but there was a bunch of trash in the way, so I couldn't shoot. So I can't see her, but I can see him. He's raking on trees, and he's just in his own little world. Well, then he kind of starts, moving kind of towards me, but to my left. And that's when I had that tree line for cover. So I was like, okay, great. So I'm gonna ease that way. Hopefully he pops out and gives me a shot. So I'm easing that way, lose visual contact to him, but I have a point that I'm trying to get to. And I look, and that doe is laying like right in front of me in the woods, facing away from me, no idea that I'm there. So I just kind of drop down to my knees, and I freeze. I'm kind of looking around, and all of a sudden, on the right corner of my eye, I catch movement, and I look over, just move my eyes, and sure enough, it's him. Now I had my rangefinder in my hand, because I was thinking this was probably going to be a quick range kind of thing, and so I slowly brought my rangefinder up, and he's at 21 yards. But there's too much little, like, willow, brushy trash in the way for an archery shot. So that 21 yards, and kind of like, he's just like pacing, kind of like guarding her. Like, he'd go stand by her for a little while, and he'd kind of like go walk and rake some trees back and forth. So I'm literally on my knees it felt like 5 hours. I have no idea how long it actually was, but now it's kind of getting dark. So as it was getting dark, I knew I probably wasn't going to get a shot. And so I just laid down, because now I'm in their kitchen, right? So I just lay down. As long as I don't blow them out and I can get out of here, hopefully she'll be here in the morning. Hopefully he'll be here in the morning. I can have a better game plan. So I just laid down. So I'm laying down, and I hear like a noise off to my right, and my head is kind of flat on the ground looking to my left. So I slowly move my head to my right, and I look over, and there's a little buck that is standing on the levee with me. And I don't think I could have grabbed him, but really close, I could have grabbed his leg, is how close he was standing next to me. He was just staring down at that doe. Well, this big deer, Droppy, all of a sudden he does like a woof, like a ruh, and he like does like a charge at this young buck. That young deer gets run off. He marches back, and this is how close he was. So when he came back, I could hear the of him breathing. That's how close I was to this deer. And all of a sudden, I hear the raking of the branches. And again, my head is kind of, my ear is flat on the ground. And out of my peripheral, I look up, and I can see the little brushy trees that I am by, like literally that I am by. Those branches are what's moving. Like, he's literally raking the tree. He has to be less than 5 yards from me, is how close he had to been. So I'm sitting here. I'm like, this is all like this to me. This is the experience, right? Like, I do not have to kill this deer, but this right here is like the moment of why I do this. So I'm just jacked up this whole time. And so he quits raking that tree. He kind of, I can hear him walking around, and all of a sudden I can hear rap, rap, kind of off in the distance. I kind of hear him just do that rap, and run off again. And when he did that, I just belly crawled back up over the levee, snuck on out of there, and it was absolutely incredible. And now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get eyes on that deer again, and that was on, I want to say it was on a Wednesday, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, something like that. And that Saturday was their rifle season, and so I hunted that deer the whole rest of the week. Night photos of him, but nothing. Could not get eyes on him again, and then a rifle hunter killed him, unfortunately, on Saturday morning. So if anyone would like a photo of that deer, I have a photo that I can share with you. But he's a special deer. He's definitely one of those deer that you dream about. So unfortunate, but a pretty amazing experience.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So that's why I travel. So anyways, that's my hunting story that I had. So okay, so let's dig into the meat of what I want to talk about. And Whitney, I'll apologize in advance that you're going to basically have to sit here and listen to me talk a lot. You'll certainly interject if you see you fit on this, but I want to dig into this idea and this approach, and I think this is a really valuable thing for us to reflect on as individuals, as trainers, as dog owners, as leaders in general. And this comes from a book that I read, and this whole time that I was reading this book, I was just geeking out because I just felt like there were so many things in this book that could be applied to what we all talk about with the dogs. And so if you have followed me for any amount of time, you know that my absolute favorite book of all time is Extreme Ownership. And that book was written by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, and they are ex-Navy SEALs, have a lot of that combat leadership experience. And I just think there's so much that applies to life in general. But whether you're talking about mental approach or physical approach, there's so many great things and great nuggets from that. Well, I believe I've read all of their books, but one of the sequels to Extreme Ownership is called the Dichotomy of Leadership. And what I'm going to call this episode, and something I'm really going to dig more into, and I want to have way more content around this because I think this is so good. I'm calling this, instead of the dichotomy of leadership, I'm going to call this the dogchotomy of training.
Good one.
See, and I'm gonna tell you why. So the dichotomy of leadership, and I literally have notes upon notes here. I'm not joking that I was geeking out reading this book, but I want to go over kind of some initial thoughts. Like I'm going to scratch the surface on this here, but I think this is going to be some really good stuff. So let's kind of dig into this. So the dichotomy of leadership, what this really is about is when you are leading any group of people, any person, there's always going to be a fine line that you have to walk, right? And so like the definition of a dichotomy is a contrast of two things that are entirely different, right? So you need to be stern, but you can't be over the top, right? You have to be flexible, but you can't be too giving, right? And so it's a very tough tightrope to walk, especially in what I appreciate with these guys is that they're talking about this at an elite level as far as combat experience, an elite level as far as I think there's very little argument that the Navy SEALs are one of the highest operating teams in the world, elite levels of this. And so I wanted to read this from you guys know I love the mental side of things. I love the leadership side. I love self growth. Excuse me. But as I dug into this, I was like, oh my gosh, that applies. Oh my gosh, that applies. Oh my gosh, that applies. So I want to kind of dig in this a little bit. And so, so the I'm just gonna gotta go through my notes because I think I'm kind of like, you can probably tell, like in my voice I'm kind of starting to geek out already a little bit. But there's so much, like I could literally probably talk about this for hours and really dig into this. But I'm just gonna I've highlighted a few of my notes here that I really want to kind of dig into and talk about this. But again, nuggets that I'm hoping you can take away and that you can apply. Okay, so the first one being leadership. Okay, so when you're talking about leadership, when you're talking about your relationship with your dog, it's all about leadership. We know that, right? Dogs are pack animals. They look for leadership. They want to follow. They want to have a strong leader. And so the first thing that they really talk about and say you have to identify is, team and mission. Okay, so what is your team? What is your mission? Now, of course, I'm going to bend this a little bit because they talk about, as far as like what your team is, like, what are the personalities in your team? What are the strengths and weaknesses of your team? And I think you can apply that a little bit to your dog, but you know who the team is. It's you and your dog, right? So that's your team. I do think that we all have a different mission, right? So like for me, I want my dogs to perform at elite levels. I want them to achieve, these titles. I want them to be able to do these very impressive things. I have very high expectations. But that doesn't mean that's what has to be your mission. Like your mission might be that I want my dog to be obedient or be able to walk at heel without a leash or retrieve a bird to hand, right? Like, what is your mission? And that mission can change. But what is your mission? I think identifying that is very important so that you know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, you're going to go through the motions, right? So team and mission, identify that. And what the team, being able to make a difficult call for the good of the team and the mission is kind of the challenge on this, okay? So the reason you have to identify team and mission is because when you have to make a difficult call, that you're doing it with those two things in mind, team and mission. Now, difficult call, again, for these guys is going to be much more impactful or much more magnified, than, for us. But it's something to think about. Team and mission, identify what those are, and have a goal that you're working towards with that. So, so then that kind of brings me into the balancing the relationship with your. Now, they had people, right? For us, it's going to be dog. And I think this one is really, really interesting. And this is where I think a lot of people struggle with balancing the relationship with your dog, okay? So here's some notes that I have with this is that you want to care deeply about your dog. I think we can all agree with that, right? But you can't let that relationship get out of control. You want to care about the dog. You want the dog to be a part of your family. We hear all the time, this is my fur baby. It's my, okay. That's great that you love your dog that much, but you cannot let that get out of control to where there's no boundary. There's no respect. There is no, the relationship is, I think, potentially a one-way street. Not that they don't love you back, but that they don't respect you, right? That is a very fine line. And I think this is something that we see people really struggle with. And this is where, again, being a dichotomy is something that you can really look at to say, hey, like, I have to be able to see both sides of this. I can't love my dog. And when I say love my dog, I mean let them do whatever they want, right? I need to love my dog, but I need to have the discipline of here are the boundaries. Right? And I'm going to get into more of this a little later on. So I think that's really interesting. But then also, so we want you to care deeply about your dog, but we also want you to care deeply about your goals, but not so much. So here are the dichotomies, right? Care deeply about your dog, but you can't let the relationship get out of control, right? Care deeply about your goals, but not so much that you lose sight of who your dog is. And I think this is another side of it. I think this is something that trainers, I feel like I can talk about this because I am one. Trainers do struggle with this. This is the goal. This is where we're pushing. We have to get this dog to this point, and we forget about the dog as an individual, right? We think about the mission. We think about the goal over the dog, okay? The dichotomy, you have to be able to balance that, and you have to be able to walk that line, okay? So really interesting stuff as far as that balancing, the relationship side of it. then we kind of roll into micromanagement, versus hands-off leadership. Now, I don't think that this necessarily applies. At least it doesn't jump out at me as some of this other stuff. But I want to kind of read through some of this stuff because again, I think trainers, professional trainers, they tend to be more on the micromanagement side of this. I think your average owner tends to be more the hands-off leadership, side of this. So, micromanagement leader, just some notes that I have here. That lack of initiative from the team. You want to do everything yourself. The bold and aggressive action kind of becomes rare from the team because the team is just always looking for the leader to make the move, make the decision. No creativity from the team, right? Teams stay inside their silo. There's no cooperation, no initiative, right? An overall sense of passivity and failure to react. Where I think this is really interesting, and I see this a lot when you get at whether a hunt test or field trial at these high levels, and we hear a lot that people don't want their dogs to be robots, right? They want their dog to have personality. They want their dog to have energy. They don't want to lose who they are. But you do see a lot of these dogs that if they're pounded into, you do what I say, when you say, or when I say it, there's no excuse, there's nothing. That's the micromanagement style here, right? That is over the shoulder, 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't get to think for yourself. You do as I say, right? I'm going to circle back to this, why this is impactful. Hands-off leadership from, again, I would say this is more, call your average, Joe owner. Lack of vision, lack of coordination between individuals, failure to coordinate, focusing on the wrong priorities, too many people trying to lead because there is no leader, right? Like, again, this is for people, but I think a lot of those can be applied for, for the dog side of things. I mean, if there's not a leader, who is that dog going to follow? And all of a sudden that dog's butting heads, that dog is pushing boundaries, that dog is getting out of control, we don't see obedience. Well, that's because there's not a leader, right? Like, you can't be hands off. But I don't think you can be a micromanager either. And again, I'm going to circle back to that. So those two styles, again, you want to walk the tightrope in between those, right? And so you don't want to be a micromanager. You don't want to be hands-off. You got to find a way to be in the middle of that, right? And so I think the big thing that I gather from this is that in order to be a good leader, you have to be able to be a good follower. And I think that's something that anyone that is out there that has ever had what they'd consider a bad boss, I'd be willing to bet that this right here is probably the reason that boss was not perceived as a good leader. If you can't follow, how can you ask others to follow you? If you don't understand the value of that, you're never going to see, the forest through the trees. And so, some ideas that I had around this, because I think you could question, okay, like how does that apply to me, right? Because how would I ever be a follower of my dog? And I think it's a good question, right? Because we talk so much about being a leader and being a strong leader, but you think about this. These are just a couple ideas that came to my head. Okay, so for a couple of situations that just this year have happened to me. So we were down in Texas on a teal hunt, and Brock picks up the birds and the decoys. Somebody said that there was one that sailed. I sent him back, tweet, give him a cast, tweet, and I told somebody where to go from here. They said back left. I gave him that cast. Brock immediately broke down, sniff, 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 and he worked right. Okay, now, if I'm a micromanager on this, I stop him, and I go, no, I told you to go back left, and make him go back left. But in this case, he's leading. Like, he's in a better position to be successful, to make the team successful, to make the mission successful. He's in the best position to do that. Now, if he's a robot and he only does what I say and he stays on my joystick, I'm going to work him back to the wrong area. As you can probably tell by now, he was successful. I can work him back to the wrong area time and time and time again. We all get frustrated. We all get stressed out. And guess what? We fail. But in this situation, Brock said, hey, I got this. I'm going to take point. I'm going to take the lead. I'm going to make sure we get this done. And for me, because I was able to read his body language, I said, you know what? Go for it. Right? And sure enough, he was successful. So in this situation, I believe, I followed. I didn't lead. Right? I followed. And that's why we were successful. Reloading from memory is another one that I did, because Brock specifically is very animated with this, but I would say a lot of our dogs are, to where if we're running specifically a triple mark where they go, bird 1, bird 2, bird 3, they go pick up that third bird, they come back. I might have a game plan of where I want to go next, right? Which bird I want to go pick up next. But when that dog comes back and goes, boom, let's just say I want to go pick up number 2, and he comes back and reloads, and he's right on number 1, right? Unless there's a real reason to pull him off of that, I'm going to take his lead and go, okay, you got this. You go get this one, right? Being a good follower in this case, right? Go get the one that you there's a reason that you want to go get this one, go do it, right? And then, if this just kind of wraps, back to it, if a leader can't be a good follower, they're incapable of being a good leader, so we talk so much lead. This is just one of those situations. I feel like, you could find a number of spots. You're like, hey, like, I followed my dog here. Whitney, you specifically in your upland situations, right? Like,
Yeah.
I would say that you are giving a lot of leadership to the dogs in that they are hunting and they are actively hunting. Maybe not for themselves is probably the wrong way to put it, but it's not like you're directing them to the bird.
Never. You can't.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think, this would be, there are a lot of people that upland hunt with flushers and retrievers that say, when I get into a field, I just follow the dog. Right? Like, I'm sorry, you guys, but I might be busting your guys' ego a little bit here. Your dog is a better hunter than you are. I don't know you. I don't know your dog, but I can honestly say that.
Right.
Your dog's a better hunter than you are. And so there are these situations that in a spot like this to follow. I think as people, like this, for me, this is again, like, and I know I'm kind of ragging on my profession here. This is where I really think this is where the training community can get better. You have your way of doing it. You've been successful with your way of doing it. That's fantastic. But that doesn't mean that there's not things to be learned by other people. That's not to say that you can't pull a nugget out from listening to someone else or watching someone else run, or there's a different idea, right? Like, being open to that makes you a better human. It makes you likely better at your craft. But there's a lot of ego in this, especially because you are leading these dogs that want nothing more than to go follow you. And so, I just think that as a whole, and now there are a lot of good ones out there and a lot of people that do have this approach, but I'm just saying as a whole, I think this is something that we can all get better at. So to be a good leader, you have to be able to follow. I think that's a really good note. Okay, so another note, and this is one that, like, obviously, like, hit me right in the face, and you're going to know why as soon as I say it. The point here was train hard, but train smart. Now, of course, they're talking about training, as far as, like, preparing for combat. We're training, preparing for in the field, right? But a couple points that I have in this section is no growth in the comfort zone. Like, you're not going to grow in your comfort zone. You're not going to grow when you go and throw the same hand-thrown marks every single day. You're not going to grow when you go do, the same, spot, or run the same mark in the water, the same, like, you're not, it's comfortable because your dog is good at it, which makes them feel good, which makes you feel good, but you're not growing, right? No growth in the comfort zone. Training should be difficult because it prepares the team for greater challenges. Training should be difficult because it prepares the team for greater challenges. Okay, so again, like, are you guys geeking out with me at this point? Like, I'm hoping you guys are saying yes too, because this applies to us 100%. Right? Why do we not go out and throw 50-yard marks all the time? Because when we go up to North Dakota and that first one, sails at 150, like, if we're not very proficient at 200-300. That 150 seems like a huge mountain to climb, right? We want it to be difficult. We want to get to the hunts like in Arkansas. Not going to lie, a lot of the retrieves are very easy. They're in the timber. They're right in front of them. They're very easy retrieves, right? But they're easy to us because we train for so much more difficult, right? If we only train for that, they wouldn't seem that easy. And so your training should get you out of your comfort zone, and it should challenge you. And you should be anything that you think that you're going to encounter. You should be training and be preparing for more than that, so that you are prepared for that situation when it does come. Another note here, all good training focuses on 3 critical aspects. And again, geeking out moment, like I love this. Really think about this. And I would highly encourage you guys to be taking notes on this. Like my notepad is absolutely littered. And I'm trying to give you like these high level points, but you're really, this is really good stuff. So again, all good training focuses on 3 critical aspects. Those critical aspects are realism, fundamentals, and repetition. Kind of sounds like dog training, doesn't it? Realism, fundamentals, and repetition. Okay, so let's break all those down. So realism. Realism is simulate situations and make it difficult for both the leader and the follower. So decisions must be made quickly. Okay, so realism. So you might be saying, okay, so how can I incorporate that into my training? So on a hunt, excuse me 1 second. Hopefully Brett edits that out. I'm sorry, you guys. Realism. Okay, so think about our training situations versus our hunts. A training setup, you come, you're like, I think I'm going to throw Mark from here to there. I think I'm going to throw Mark from here to there. I'm going to run this blind like that. Okay, that's great. But it doesn't allow you as the handler to make any decisions on the fly. You know what's happening, which I would argue leads you to err on the micromanagement side because you know how you want this to look. You go on a hunt, it is not like that. You don't know where these birds are going to fall. You don't know what blinds are going to come up. You don't know what situation is going to go on with, hey, I'm halfway on a blind. I blow a whistle and somebody else goes, oh my gosh, another big group bowed up and you got to call that dog back in. Or do you say, no, we can't shoot those birds. We need to pick this bird up first because otherwise that bird might not be recovered. You need to make decisions on the fly in a hunting situation that, quite frankly, I would bet the majority of people out there, they do not have to have that kind of action in a training setup. Okay, so what do? We actually do work on this. And one of the things that I'll do throughout the summer is that I'll have specifically David, who works for me. Dave's actually worked for me for 10 years at the kennel. Sometimes I'll just be like, hey, go set something up for me. Just go set up my set. I want a double, or I want 2 doubles, and I want 2 blinds. Just go set up for me. And then I'll go out, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but I run through it. Like if you had a training partner, you could do that, right? Hey, I don't know I know I have a double. I know I have a blind. Surprise me. I know it's not the real thing, but you're trying to do, but let's talk about the real thing, right? How many of you guys are shooting the gun? Poppers, of course, shooting live rounds all the time is just dangerous and doesn't make sense. But how many guys are using the gun? How many of you guys are dressing in camo when you train? Right? Like all these things can help add to the realism so that it is not so different when you go on the hunt. Realism is a big part of this. Fundamentals, and I loved this part when they talked about this because they had talked about, I'm not going to say word for word here just because I don't remember the word for word, but it was something as much as the fundamentals is what everyone wants to get through and be done with. Sounds a lot like obedience, right? They want to get through it and get done with it. But one of the things I have written down here in my notes is without the fundamentals worked on a regular basis, they will be forgotten. That's how your mind works, right? Without the fundamentals being worked on a regular basis, they will be forgotten. You don't get done with obedience training. You don't fly through it so you can move on to something more fun, more sexy, more, I don't want to post a video of obedience on social media. I want to do something like a big water entry. Like, you don't just blow through it. And if you don't continually work on it, you will see issues come up as a result. Fundamentals. So we have realism, we have fundamentals, and then the last one is repetition. Again, sounds a lot like a lot of Duck Dog podcasts, doesn't it? Repetition. What I loved, the note that I have here on repetition, and I love how they said this, is that repetition is the mother of learning. Without repetition, it doesn't sink in and you don't become proficient. Repetition is the mother of learning. So you have realism, you have fundamentals, and you have repetition. And again, their thought here is that's how you train hard, but you train smart. All good training focuses on these three aspects: realism, fundamentals, repetition. You do those three things, you're going to be successful. Dog training, right? So, gosh, you think I should save this for another episode, or should I just keep going?
It's up to you.
Whitney's probably like, I'm about ready to be done with this.
You know what I'm doing? I'm actually sitting here, and it's so funny because you always talk about the adult dog side and the training side, but you could relate every single one of these to bringing home your puppy and raising a puppy from the very beginning.
Oh, for sure.
So that's where my mind has been.
Yeah, no.
Applying this to all my puppies and my puppy buyers.
That's kind of an interesting, viewpoint on this, right? I never look at that viewpoint. I should say rarely do I look at that viewpoint. I'm going to keep going because I'm in the zone right now on this. I'm feeling this, and you guys can just hit pause and pick up on this later on if you want to. But really good stuff here. Okay, so as we keep moving on here, I have quite a few more notes here, but I'm going to keep rolling. So so now we're going to get into two dichotomies that I feel like we in our positions with our dogs that we do face on a regular basis. And I think it's worth just digging into these a little bit because I think you can apply these immediately with your own self. Okay. So the first dichotomy I want to get into is disciplined, not rigid. Okay. So when you learn the rules, so this is kind of an example that they use. Okay. So this is why you want to be disciplined. When you learn the rules of a dance by heart, you will suddenly feel the full freedom of the movement and will fully enjoy the dance. Okay. That sink in for everybody? Like, it's not fun learning the steps and fumbling around, and it looks messy and it's frustrating. But once you get it, and it's down, you have it memorized by heart. Now all of a sudden you can hear the music, right? You can feel it. You can let go. You can enjoy it. But without the discipline to get there, you're never going to have that feeling. Rules give freedom. That's the reality. And that's our reality for sure. Rules give freedom. A dog that is under control gets to do more things. A dog that is obedient gets to go more places. A dog that is polite gets to see more people. A dog that is well-rounded gets to go more places and do more things because they are disciplined, because they have rules. A dog that is out of control doesn't get to go do that stuff, or at least no one wants them to come around. Rules give freedom. And I think the big thing for me here is that discipline is not being mean to your dog. And I hate this thought, and I think there's so much of this on social media, and everybody wants to have an opinion on this. Like, it's just irritating to me because you want to say that I'm being mean to my dog because they have crate time, or that I make them sit and be steady, or be like. These dogs get to go do things that most dogs would only dream of doing. But it's because of the structure. I promise you, these dogs are members of our family. They are loved every single day. But discipline is not being mean. It's not being cruel, right? And actually, my argument is that I give my dogs more freedom because they are disciplined and because they are under control.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be disciplined, not rigid, right? You don't want, like, it's easy to go from disciplined to over the top, go from disciplined to being heavy handed, disciplined to be, some of these words I struggle with because of how it's perceived in the dog, community. I was going to say not verbally abusive, like to where you lose, your frustration, your anger comes out and you say things, and like obviously you're not abusing, the dog there, but yeah, that's all part of this, right? But you have to walk that line. Humble, not passive is the next one. Humble, but not passive. Okay. And what they talk about here in the book is that for a leader, being humble is one of the absolute best traits that you can have. It allows you to see what goes on. It allows you to connect, with your team. It allows you to, to not, put yourself or your team in, negative circumstances. But also being passive is one of the worst traits that a leader can have. Who has ever wanted to follow a passive leader? I don't think anyone, right? You don't want a leader that's passive. But humble and passive they can be they're very close, but they're very different, right? You be too humble, you become passive. Not humble enough, all of a sudden you're arrogant, right? Like that's a hard one. But I think being humble in our case, it allows you to connect with your dog. It allows you to understand, hey, I have to go at your pace. Right? Being humble, it allows you to redshirt your dog their first year. Okay? If you're arrogant, you don't do that. If you're arrogant, you need to show off this dog. Right? And you'll make every excuse in the book of why the dog has to hunt. If the dog's not ready and you're humble, you see that. But I promise you, if you get to the point that you're passive, more times than not, your dog will start pushing you around because they need a strong leader. Humble, not passive. So I'm going to kind of, cut it there just because I think that's a lot. I think there's a lot there. I think it's a lot of really good stuff. But I love this. Like I'm going to put something together around this, I think. I'd love your guys' feedback on what you guys thought of this. Maybe you guys are like, yeah, it's fine. Not one of your best, But I just love this idea. I love this thought. I really love the mental side, the leadership side. And so I'm going to leave you with this piece of it, which is kind of key lessons that I've taken away from this book and key lessons that I know that I've been applying and would like to share with you. So if I really break this down into 3 key points, it is how to manage your people/dogs, how to manage your mission/goals, and how to balance yourself. Okay, so let's just talk about the balance side. So, the balance of your people and dogs, care about them deeply, but not to the point that you lose sight of the mission or the goal. Okay, care about your dog, love your dog, but not to the point that you let them get out of control, let them push you around, and it prohibits you from getting to where you want to go as a team. Remember, the more disciplined they are, the more freedom they're going to get. Okay, love doesn't have to be, that they sit at the kitchen table with you and have their own plate, right? Own your mistakes, but empower them to make their own. I put this one in here because this is something that I know that I've done with my team at the kennel, and maybe someone else is in a spot that that this can help them too. I'm going to own my mistakes, but I also want to be able to. I want my team to have initiative and have enough power to go make decisions. They're going to make a lot of right decisions, but they're going to make their own mistakes too, and that's how we grow and that's how we learn. Right. So own your mistakes, but empower them to make them too. And then be resolute, but not overbearing. And that's one that I feel like I've really tried to kind of toe that line, for me. So that's my balance your people / dogs. Balancing the mission / goals. The reason I say / goals is I just feel like mission is kind of seems big for us. Like our like I don't know if we're on a mission, but we do have goals that we're working towards with our dogs. So start the mission itself, or the goals. It starts before the actual mission, right? It starts during training. So if you go back to, and I'm going to actually flip through my notes, you go back to the train hard but train smart, right? The reason that we put difficult challenges in front of us, the reason that we went through realism and fundamentals and repetition, the reason we went out of our comfort zone, right, was to prepare us for the actual goal. That actual goal is when you're in the field. Right? That's the actual live hunt. That's what you've been working for. That's why you're there. It might be a hunt test. It might be a field trial. It might be a live hunt. Whatever your mission or goal is, it starts way before you get there. Right? So, making sure that we have that in mind. That's why I think, again, going all the way to the beginning, this is why you need to identify what is your goal. What is your mission? Know what you're working towards, and then build from there. Training must be hard but smart. Okay, I think this is really important for us. Hard means pushing us out of our comfort zone, right? Pushing us maybe longer marks, what we want, longer blinds, whatever. But be smart. Don't be running your dog in 102-degree heat because you're like, oh, like this makes it harder. I mean, that's dumb.
That's so dumb.
But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I do.
Figure I should clarify that. Also, don't be, like, I'm not working in iced over water because I'm like, oh, this is harder. This is what we have to prepare for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, train hard, but smart.
Mm-hmm.
Be aggressive, but not reckless. This was kind of an interesting one I didn't dig into because it was one of part of some of my notes that I skipped over. Being aggressive but not reckless, I thought was a really interesting one because the word aggressive in our area is nothing but negative, right? Mm-hmm. Aggressive dogs, aggressive people, aggressive, like we think of that immediately and think negative. But aggressive also means, send him on that retrieve that you don't know if he can get, right? I just got a message from a great client and friend of ours named Corey, and Corey's dog Monty was in for advanced training here this last year, and he's like, I don't know why I even sent him. Like, I didn't think there was any way, and sure enough, he came back with that bird. Like, be aggressive. Don't be passive. Be aggressive, right? But don't be reckless.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to send them, across a busier road because, hey, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to go get this retrieve, right? Like, don't be reckless, but be aggressive, as a leader, be aggressive. And then be disciplined but not rigid, which we did go over. And then balance yourself. And we talk a lot about personal growth. We talk a lot about mental, the mental side, the mental approach, how to stay in the green. If you guys went through the stoplight podcast, but staying the two that I really took away here is stay humble but not passive, which I thought was so good, especially for us. Stay humble but not passive, and then stay focused and never detached. I thought that was really important because, again, going back to if you identify your goal, if you identify where you're going, if you put in the work, if you train hard but smart, if you do everything that we talked about, and you never detach from what your goal is, I just have a hard time believing you're not going to reach it. So, those were kind of the quick rundown of the key lessons that I took away, from this. But I'd love to do a deeper dive into this at some point. I just, like, the whole time, it was almost as if I was changing the words that I was reading while I was reading it to better relay and hit the dog points that I was hoping it was going to hit. But really good stuff. I felt like it was fantastic.
I think it's really good. I was just zoned right in the whole time thinking about it.
Were you zoned in or zoned out? I was kind of on a roll there. I was like, oh, Whitney's probably like, oh, here he goes.
No, I thought it was great. I loved it. I actually thought that last part Again, going back to the puppy side, a lot of that could be for when you're searching for the right breed. You're searching for the right breeder and then following the breeder's lead. You know, like who should be the sire? Who should be the dam of my puppy? And what puppy should I get from the litter? And how do I do this with my puppy?
And then what you're saying is being a follower in that point?
Yeah. Don't be too aggressive. Don't be too aggressive, passive.
Yeah, you look at
It's
it
really
as much
so
different.
different.
Yeah, much differently
I
than
know.
I do, but it's good stuff. Good. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. So one big thing, I head to Arkansas tomorrow. I will be bringing the podcast equipment, and I will be planning on keeping you guys posted on our hunts while we're down there. So we had a lot of very positive feedback from when we did this in North Dakota. So I want to keep that going. And please let me know what you guys thought of this episode here, because I love this stuff. I don't know what the vibe is, with you guys listening, but I promise you that we are doing more of what we hear about. So when we hear about the people like a certain thing or they're loving, a certain aspect of what we're doing, we're going more in on that. And so please let me know, because we do really take your feedback seriously. So anyway, hope you guys are having a great end of the season. If you're in the north, I hope you have a great start of the season. If you're in the south, and I hope you guys are able to get your dogs with a bunch of feathers in their mouths here in these last couple months and the months to come. So we will keep you posted from down in Arkansas.
Have a happy and safe hunting season.
Yep. All right. Talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to DUK, because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.